You bought 3 Bentleys just because you could? She smiled. Yes, Mom, just because I could. For 16 years, they thought she was broke. They pitied her, laughed behind her back. She let them believe it. But at the family reunion, she revealed the truth. A $5.2 billion digital art empire. A private island with her name written large enough to be seen from the sky. We don't invest in internet pictures, her father once said. So she built a company worth more than his entire firm. Imagine being the black sheep of the family for over a decade, only to reveal that every so-called failure was actually the foundation of a secret empire. The gold-embossed lettering of the invitation to the yearly Sullivan family reunion caught the morning light coming through my penthouse windows as it rested on my desk. 16 years of meticulously sustained deceit were coming to an end, and strangely, I didn't even choose it. Rereading the email that had set everything off, I picked up my phone. Forbes 30 under 40, digital art's emerging face. The NFT empire of Ariel Sullivan is valued at over $3.90 billion. 2 days before the family gathering, the story would be published tomorrow. There was nothing I could do to stop my meticulously built facade from collapsing. My assistant said, "Miss Sullivan," over the intercom. "Your brother Nathan is on line 1. Again. He was, of course, since the news release was sent to major publications, he had been phoning constantly. I inhaled deeply before picking up the phone. "Hello, Nathan." He ignored politeness and said, "What the hell, Ariel? I just got a call from Business Insider asking for a comment about my billionaire sister. Want to explain that?" I reclined in my chair and gazed at the skyline of Manhattan. "I guess you'll have to wait for the article, like everyone else." "Cut the crap," he yelled at them. "All these years, you've been letting us think you were barely getting by. Mom and Dad have been worried sick about you." I couldn't contain my laughter. Worried? Is that what you call it? The constant lectures about getting a real job. The snide comments about how I'm wasting my potential. They were trying to help. No, they were trying to control me. Just like they tried to control you. And you let them. On the other end of the telephone, there was silence. Nathan had always behaved well and followed our parents' well-thought-out plan. Business school, getting an MBA, and working for our father's investing company, the golden son who followed the script exactly. His words, just tell me one thing, came last. How long? How long have you been hiding this?" I got up and went to the window to watch a private helicopter touch down on the helipad of a nearby building. Actually, it was one of my 3 helicopters. Remember when I moved to that tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn? With a calculated pause, he said, "When you first started with your digital art nonsense, that was 16 years ago? That's right. Everyone thought I was crazy, throwing away my finance degree to doodle on computers, as Dad called it. But what none of you knew was that I'd already sold my first NFT collection for $55,000. $50,000. Back then? And 6 months later, I sold another for $220,000. By the time Dad was telling everyone at Christmas dinner that I was going through a phase, I had my first million. I could practically hear him mentally calculating, but you still borrowed money from Mom and Dad for rent. You drove that beater Panda until last year. Nathan, I never borrowed money from them. I constantly and loudly urged them to invest in my business, but they refused. The Honda wasn't required, it was an option, similar to this penthouse. The private jet too, as well as anything else I concealed from you all." His voice broke. "Jesus, Sophia, how wealthy are you?" I grinned as I recalled all of the family dinners in which I was treated like the underprivileged relative. The way Chloe, our younger sister, would pretend to pay the bill while making sure everyone knew she was helping out her sister, a struggling artist. I remarked, "The Forbes article will say $3.9 billion. That's a cautious estimate, though. The actual figure is more like 5. Nathan produced a sound that was in between a choke and a gasp. I went on, Now, if you don't mind, I have to go to a board meeting. Nathan, too. I'll see you during the reunion with my family. I'm considering making an appearance. Before he could answer, I hung up. I pressed the intercom and asked, "Is everything ready for the reunion, Lena Hart?" Miss Sullivan, yes. The jet is ready and fueled. All members of the family will be picked up in Rolls-Royces thanks to the car service arrangement. As requested, the location has been changed to the private island, and NDAs have been created for every employee. Excellent. I took up the invitation to the reunion once more. I'd been playing the part they expected me to for 16 years. The creative outcast who was incapable of surviving in the real world. The daughter who needs continual reassurance regarding financial accountability. Every family get-together featured the pitying and patronizing sister. Not this time, though. My youngest sister, Chloe, buzzed my phone with a text. "Tell me this Forbes stuff is a joke, please, Soph. What's happening?" I didn't respond. Chloe, at every holiday party, she never failed to emphasize her six-figure earnings. Chloe, who enjoyed reflecting on how she had made it at a time when her older sister was still figuring herself out. Once more, the intercom buzzed. "Your parents are both on the line, Miss Sullivan. Inform them that I have a meeting." I looked at my watch. "And Lena Hart, make a helipad call. I believe I'll fly the helicopter to today's board meeting." My thoughts drifted back to the day it all began, as I grabbed my belongings, the day I made the decision to keep my family in the dark about my accomplishments. 16 years prior, over the dinner table, my father's voice roared, "Sophia, digital art isn't real art. And this NFT bullshit, it's a trend, a fraud. Nobody is going to spend actual money on computer images." Trying to communicate my vision to a family that had paid for an Ivy League financial degree they wanted me to use at my father's firm, I sat there at 22, just out of college. "In fact, Dad, I recently sold my very first collection for—" "Enough," he interrupted. "I'm not interested in learning about your small pastime. You have two options. Either you come work for the company like we agreed, or you're on your own. No further assistance. No more safety net." My mother patted my hand patronizingly as she reached across the table. "We only care about what's best for you, sweetie. You require stability, a legitimate career." I glanced at their expressions around the table. The disappointment of my father. My mom's worried scowl. Nathan grinned smugly. Chloe's contempt was scarcely disguised. That's when I decided what to do. I would keep the $55,000 sale a secret from them, or the 3 galleries that expressed interest in representing me, or the IT firms contacting you about joint ventures. "You're right," I murmured as I got to my feet. "I have to work this out myself." I moved into the cheapest and tiniest studio apartment I could find in Brooklyn 2 weeks later. Living off of my money, and too proud to confess failure, my family imagined I was having difficulties. I was actually creating an empire. It was a demanding first year. During my 18-hour workdays, I honed my artistic abilities, gained knowledge of blockchain technology, and made contacts in the crypto art community. Digital Dreams in Binary, my first significant collection, brought in $1.3 million after selling out in a matter of hours. I used that money to reinvest in the company, recruiting developers, developing new artist platforms, and inventing in ways that the conventional art world could not have imagined. However, I always drove my old Honda while I was home, wore plain clothing, lived the role of the artist who is striving. My father would shake his head in dismay, as my mother would say, "At least let me help with your rent." "Thanks, Mom, but no. I'm doing all okay." 2. More than acceptable. My net worth reached $11 million by the conclusion of that first year. By the third year, $110 million, but I was still just Sophia to my family, the person who dreams, the girl who was unable to deal with reality. As I got into my own helicopter, 16 years later, I reflected on how everything had turned out to be more complicated than I had ever imagined. What started off as a small lie had expanded into a huge secret. and everything would be different in 2 days. Once more my phone buzzed. A note from my dad. We must speak. Right now. Grinning, I hung up the phone. Waiting for the reunion would be their only option. They had been listening to my failures for 16 years, and now they were going to hear about my successes. And I was going to make sure they would never forget the revelation. At precisely 6 a.m., the Forbes piece was published. Eastern Time. I was already up, enjoying a cup of coffee at my home office while observing the mayhem on several screens. Digital art pioneer, how Ariel Sullivan covertly created a multi-billion-dollar empire. The headline included a picture that I had picked out especially for this occasion. Wearing clothing that cost more than my sister Chloe's monthly wage, I stood in front of my most successful NFT collection. In addition to disclosing my fortune, the piece listed all of my accomplishments that I had kept a secret for 16 years. There were so many notifications on my phone. The family group chat started first. Are you serious? $3.90 billion. Yesterday, I made an effort to alert everyone. Please answer your phone. Sophia, there has to be a mistake here. I recently came upon the article. Is Sophia Sullivan indeed our Ariel? I pulled up my emails and silenced the chat. Major news outlets have requested hundreds of interviews, offers for investments, speaking engagements. I did notice one email, though, from Albert Chen, my father's business associate. Subject: potential for synergy. Sophia, I think we should talk about how Sullivan Investments and your digital art platforms might work together. We can be rather accommodating, even though your father may have had some reservations. Albert, I couldn't contain my laughter. I had inquired about a partnership with their firm 3 years prior. I was shown the door by Albert himself, who informed me that they didn't deal in internet pictures. It buzzed on my intercom. Your mother is in the lobby, Miss Sullivan. She is quite demanding. I looked at the security feed. Alina Sullivan was there. As she clashed with the security guard, her eyes had an unfamiliar wildness. Yet she was still impeccably dressed in her fancy suit. I groaned and said, "Let her up." At least one of my family members needed to be confronted. My penthouse was readily accessible by private elevator. My mom went outside and then stopped, surveying her surroundings. The huge open area. Central Park is seen from the floor-to-ceiling windows. It's likely that the original Basquiat on the wall cost more than their home. Sophia, she said. She spoke erratically. What is all of this? Mom, this is my house. The authentic one. Not the tiny place I reserve for visits from relatives. Her heels clicked on the marble floor as she walked carefully to the window. How much time have you... How did you... After pouring her a cup of coffee, I added, 16 years. Ever since Dad told me that my digital artwork would never be anything. Her expression was a mix of hurt and bewilderment as she turned to face me. However, you had difficulty. We witnessed it. The small apartment, the old vehicle, taking out a loan to pay the rent. I corrected her, saying, I never borrowed money. I asked Dad and you to put money into my business. That is not the same. And everything else, the vehicle, the apartment, all of that was just theater. A theater? She raised her voice. For 16 years, you have been deceiving us? No, Mother. I simply allowed you to see what you desired. You guys never bothered to look more closely since you were so certain that I was failing. She looked older than I had ever seen her when she slid into one of my Italian leather chairs. Is there anyone else in the family who is aware? No one. Well, when the press release was sent out yesterday, Nathan learned. He must have tried to alert you. She gave a feeble nod. Your father was certain it was an error, but he called another Sophia Sullivan. After walking to my workstation, I took out a folder. I handed it to her and said, Here, you might find this interesting. I intended to present you with the investment opportunity 16 years ago. 3 years ago, I made an attempt to present to Dad. His portion would have been worth almost $110 million. Now, if he had invested the $1 million I requested, She accepted the file with trembling hands. You wanted a handout, he remarked, that you were too arrogant to acknowledge that your art wasn't succeeding. And you trusted him, I muttered, just as you thought he was telling the truth about my life as a so-called struggling artist. I stopped. Mom, tell me, did any of you ever attend one of my gigs in 16 years? Have a look at my work. Even look up my name on Google. She was unable to look me in the eye. I had that thought. I approached the window and gazed down at the city that I now controlled in part. In 2 days, the yearly family gathering will take place. The arrangements have changed in a few ways. Modifications, she inquired cautiously. I reserved the entire resort where it was scheduled to take place. Rather, my own vehicles will pick everyone up and transport them to my jet. Your jet? My island will be the location of our reunion. Your island? In the Caribbean. When I closed my first billion-dollar deal last year, I purchased it. I looked over at her. And this time, Mom, I won't be the one sitting in silence as everyone celebrates their accomplishments. I have a few things to say this time. She straightened her skirt with trembling hands and got to her feet. Your father will eventually have to acknowledge that his little girl's computer picture play created something greater than his entire family's legacy when he sees all of this. I grinned, and that's only the start. Before she could enter, I added one final item after I escorted her to the elevator. Oh, and Mom, Dad claims that the Bentley you've been eyeing is too costly. Last month I purchased 3, just because I was able to. The elevator doors shut on her astonished face. I picked up the phone as soon as she left. Is everything prepared for the reunion, Lena Hart? Miss Sullivan, yes. The team on the island is ready. Each family member has had their documentation packets put up, which include the precise moment they rejected your investment offers, as well as the current value of those shares. Additionally, your Success Timeline's video presentation is prepared. Excellent. I finally picked up my phone and sent a single message in response to the family group chat. I'm looking forward to the reunion with everyone. You should dress for a private island. There will be transportation available. I then checked the market on my laptop. The Forbes piece caused the stock of my company to rise. Before breakfast, my net worth increased by another billion. I considered my father, who is most likely sitting in his office at this very moment, attempting to comprehend how his failing daughter has subtly become one of the wealthiest individuals in the nation. Concerning my sister Chloe, who enjoyed boasting about her Hamptons holiday property and her 6-figure salary, I came to the realization that the interest I earned every day could purchase her entire life. It was going to be an interesting reunion. Really fascinating, in fact. Once more, my phone buzzed. A note from my dad. Prior to the reunion, we must meet. Family issues are best discussed in private. I typed back, Dad, we'll talk about it all during the reunion. After all, isn't it the purpose of family get-togethers? Expressing our accomplishments. I then gave Lena Hart another call. Speak with the design team. Before the reunion, I would like the helipad on the island to be painted, and when they land, make sure my name is visible from the air. Done already, Miss Sullivan. Is there anything else? 16 years of condescension crossed my mind, out of sympathy, of being viewed as the failure of the family. Indeed, ensure that the Forbes piece is framed and displayed in each of the island resort's rooms. I want them to notice it right away. Wherever they go. I noticed my reflection in the window as I hung up. Accomplished. Strong. Finally, I'm prepared to show my family who I've grown into. While they spent their time questioning me, the reunion countdown had started. The Sullivan family reunion day came bright and clear. 3 black Rolls-Royces came in formation as I stood on my private airfield's asphalt. My folks were here. The vehicles came to a halt. The doors were opened. My father arrived first, his once dominant demeanor visibly weakened. After our meeting 2 days ago, my mother still appears frightened. Nathan comes next. Chloe, Other aunts, uncles, and cousins trailed behind, their faces displaying everything from surprise to barely disguised anger. And there, right in the middle, stood by my shining private jet, which had the exquisite words Sule Van Digital Empire emblazoned on its side. I said, "Welcome, everyone," my voice echoing over the tarmac. "I hope you had a comfortable ride." In an attempt to regain control, my father said, "Ariel, this is not necessary. At the resort, we could have had a wonderful reunion." I grinned. "Dad, the resort was too visible. In addition, I believe it's time for some genuine family time. On my island." "Your island," Chloe whispered, holding her high-end purse tightly. "You have an island, of course." The trip was eye-opening. My family's gaze raced around the lavish cabin as they settled in, soaking in the lavish details. Solid gold fixtures, uncommon pieces of art, well-trained personnel serving vintage champagne. "Is that a genuine Picasso?" Aunt Patricia, gazing at the painting on the cabin wall, murmured. "Yes," I said nonchalantly. "I purchased it a year ago, in addition to a few others." My dad cleared his throat. "Sophia, maybe we should talk about—" "Dad, we'll talk about everything when we land. Enjoy the flight for now. The champagne is especially delicious. Cost more than the quarterly profits of your business." He winced. "Excellent." We started our descent 2 hours later. My little island appeared through the windows. A modern resort complex is at the heart of 300 acres of tropical splendor. And there, as I had intended, visible from the air, was my name. Enormous, audacious, classy. Viet Oaf. In letters big enough for space to see. Chloe gasped as we touched down. Towering digital screens encircling the helipad, each featured one of my best-selling NFT collections. Each one is clearly marked with its retail price. Digital art is worth millions and millions of dollars, displayed on enormous screens. It would never be possible to build a monument to everything they said. As we got off the ship, I said, "Welcome to Sullivan Island." Nathan gasped as he gazed at the resort complex in front of us, a modern architectural marvel that blended in perfectly with the island's natural splendor. "Little piece of paradise," he said. I went on, "Everyone's rooms have been assigned. Some reading material will be ready for you. I advise you to go over it before supper." The reading selection had been picked with care. For my dad, records of all the investment opportunities he turned down, together with their current values. For Chloe, a thorough analysis of the difference between my daily interest income and her yearly wage. For Nathan, an explanation of how his company's refusal to collaborate with mine cost them millions of dollars. I waited an hour, only long enough to get comfortable, long enough to process what they didn't bother to inquire about. I called them into the main dining room after that. With floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, the space was a work of art. The room was dominated by a huge dining table that was hand-carved from rare wood. The cost of each place setting is likely higher than that of most people's cars. And on each wall, the article from Forbes. Gorgeously framed. Shell-shocked, my family slowly filed in. Even though they had changed for supper, their pricey attire seemed somewhat unsuitable in these conditions. "Please take a seat," I replied, pointing to the table. "We have a lot to talk about." As soon as everyone was seated, my father started to regain control and said, "Ariel, I believe that when I say that we're surprised, I speak for everyone." I said it again quietly, almost amused. "Surprised? That word choice is intriguing. I'm not upset that I lied to you. I didn't mind hiding my accomplishment. Simply put, I was taken aback." "We were unaware," my mother muttered. I told her, "You didn't want to know. Every time I attempted to discuss my work with you, you shifted the topic. You rejected my financial prospects each time I presented them. You really thought I was failing, that you were unable to see my success, even if it happened directly in front of you." Chloe cut in, "But the apartment," in a tiny voice. "The vintage vehicle, you let me pay for supper all those times because I assumed you couldn't afford it." I concluded for her, "Because you believed I couldn't afford it." Chloe, did you find that enjoyable? Acting like the giving sister. Ensuring that everyone was aware that you were assisting poor, struggling Sophia. She was graceful enough to appear embarrassed. As I pressed a button on a nearby console, I remarked, "Let me show you something." A carefully produced chronicle of my voyage, coupled with their own words, illuminated the room as screens lowered from the ceiling. "Digital art isn't real art," said Dad in 2008. $55,000 is the selling price of my first collection. 2010. "When will you be able to find a genuine job?" "Mom, the company is valued at $11 million. At least I can afford to help my sister out," Chloe said in 2015. "The net worth surpasses $550 million. 2020. "We don't spend money on online images." Dad's company. "The company is worth more than $2.1 billion. What was the most difficult part? Not the confidentiality, not feigning difficulty. It was observing your collective celebration of mediocrity, while ignoring genuine innovation. Mediocrity. Nathan snapped. "Indeed. You took Dad's safe route, obtained the position he desired for you, made the prudent financial decisions. I turned to Chloe after that. And you, I made that much in minutes, but you boasted about your six-figure salary. My father suddenly stepped up and said, 'That's enough. Your argument has been made. We were mistaken. Do you want to hear that?' No, father. My want is for you to comprehend, to truly comprehend. This, I pointed to the opulence, the scenery, the glowing screens. Money is not the issue here. It has to do with vision. The picture you were unable to see because you were too preoccupied with holding on to the past. I hit another button. There were new pictures on the screens. My most recent endeavor, a groundbreaking platform that would revolutionize the production, purchase, and sale of digital art. Next month this launches, I stated. According to conservative estimates, it is worth $15 billion. This is what I'm showing you now because, for once, before anything happens, I want you to see what I'm doing. No more ignoring it. No more questioning. As they processed the ramifications, the room became quiet. My mother finally said something. "Sophia, you have our admiration. We ought to have been pleased from the beginning." "Thank you, Mom. However, I didn't do this to boost your self-esteem. It was my dream, so I followed it. And now it's my empire," I grinned. "Well, what comes next?" Nathan questioned softly. "Now," I picked up my drink and said, "We're having dinner now. As a household. However, this time, my way is how we do it. No more acting like you're someone you're not. No more hiding. What about tomorrow? We take a tour of the island. Additionally, I'll demonstrate to you what your daughter, your sister, your niece, has constructed while you were not listening." I held up my glass. To the truth. At last, they lifted theirs as well, appearing somewhat stunned and in amazement. Fine wine, delicious cuisine, and slowly thawing discussion filled the remainder of the evening. For the first time in 16 years, my family was actually starting to see me. That night, I stayed in the dining room and stared out at the moonlit ocean as others went to their rooms. Lena Hart, my helper, showed up beside me. Was it worthwhile? Quietly, she inquired. The major disclosure. I sipped my wine slowly, then grinned. I considered the expressions on their faces. The startle, the insight, the slow comprehension. Yes, I replied in response to Lena Hart's query. But not for what I anticipated. It was no longer about disproving them. It was about being free at last. To be who I am. Tomorrow too, I grinned. We show them the future tomorrow. Their secure, dependable environment of conventional success and traditional investments. It's finished. They need to realize that the girl they dismissed as a dreamer wasn't merely a dream. She was creating a brand new universe in the absence of their gaze. I discovered a message hidden beneath my door later that evening. The handwriting of my father. I was mistaken. It's not just about business, but pretty much everything. You weren't merely successful. You transformed a whole sector. I apologize for not seeing it sooner. Dad, I put the note in a frame directly next to my first NFT sale receipt. $55,000. A remembrance of my beginnings and how far I had progressed. I observed my family getting together for breakfast the following morning. They were now more subdued and kind. I'm amazed, and I became aware of something significant at that very moment. Being successful involves more than just disproving others. Sometimes you have to prove yourself correct, and occasionally the quiet awareness of triumph rather than the announcement of success is the best victory. That you created something remarkable, while everyone else spent their time questioning you. A news alert rang on my phone. Sullivan Digital Empire reveals a groundbreaking new platform. The future was beckoning. Additionally, this time, my family would live stream it as it happened. No more hiding. No more acting like you're someone you're not. Just the truth, along with the empire I created while they were away. The beauty of rising in silence is right there. Ariel's tale serves as a reminder that the best kind of retaliation isn't loud. Rather, it's about living a good life, being proud of who you are, and creating something so amazing that those who questioned you can't turn away. Protect your peace, establish boundaries, and take your time growing if you've ever felt devalued or betrayed. The true power is healing. Have you ever experienced a similar moment to Ariel's? Did success ever speak louder than words? We would love to hear your tale, so please share it in the comments. Because sometimes the loudest response is quiet accomplishment.